Most of the time, I don't really want to overshare my situation. If anything, it's just to relate that I've dealt with certain systems and certain things, and more for them to come to their own conclusion for whatever, and empower them to make decisions in their life that better themselves. So, making sure someone's informed with all the decisions that they're able to take, and really supporting them in their own journey and their own choice and really on that word of it, like really empowering someone because there was a time where I just needed someone to sit there and say, you know what, you can do this.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. I hate it when someone try to tell me what to do exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta just do this, and you gotta
Yeah.
stop doing that, and you gotta. No, no, no. Just because at the end of the day, we know the best for ourselves,
Yeah.
whether we choose
Yeah.
to admit it or not.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Yeah.
hope to bring the best out of people, and hope to empower them to make the best decisions for themselves.
Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear.
Before we begin, these stories touch on grief, trauma, illness, disability, addiction, and loss. Support is on screen and in the show notes and description.
Awesome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fans of Kintsugi Heroes. Once more, I welcome you to a podcast where we have a story that matters. And this morning, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to a bloke who is up to his armpits in real world and still able to pull a smile out of his pocket and share it with the rest of us, which is beautiful. Louis Montero, thank you and welcome to Kintsugi Heroes.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Um. Yeah.
I have, by way of bio, you're studying community services. You do some helping work in the community and so on. You're a father, a single father raising a young child. You have a lived experience of getting through some tough times, bouncing around through the whole addiction area and so on. So, if I was to ask you what you are hoping for the rest of 2026, what would that be, bro?
Well, I guess honestly, it would be to finalize my studies. I have one unit remaining left to do. And really just lock in in the community service industry. Like really, I've just started um a job as a peer worker,
Hmm.
and I really want to lock that in for the rest of the year and hone in on supporting other people and individuals struggling with homelessness and housing. So um yeah, so just really locking on that sort of stuff. Get some hopefully some fun times for me and little man as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So you have a son. Tell us a little bit about your son.
Well, my son is 7, um, real energetic, loves music and dancing, and really into soccer at the moment. So we've got to get that sorted soon to get into a club um, with a new job. So that'll be some prospects there. Um, yeah, he's really cool, really outgoing, really charismatic, bit of a chatterbox, just like me. So yeah, he's a great personality. Yeah.
But, mate, he's as a father, you've had sole, raising duties, right?
Mm.
But that's been, originally it was a rocky start because you had to, take some journey yourself. Well, how has that impacted how you feel about your relationship with your son?
Well, I guess for me personally, it was a very big factor in my ability to recover for the situation I was in. So he was a really big motivator for me to get myself on my feet and really keep pushing and moving forward. Um, yeah, he was a real big motivating factor in doing a lot of what I've been able to achieve. Actually, like, yeah, I'm not sure where I'd be without the little guy, to be honest, because I was a bit blind Didn't know where I was going. Didn't really have much care in the world for myself or anybody else at the time,
Mm.
and really pushed me through some really difficult and challenging times.
Yeah. So the care you have for your son, your love for your son just is obvious on your face to me, right?
Mm.
Um, how did how did you end up going through your own childhood and so on into a place where um, you were vulnerable yourself? You, in many ways, you had addiction and trauma,
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll just start from somewhere, and then I'll try and pivot
mate.
to. I don't know if you've ever heard of a Jehovah's Witness. I kind of grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So,
Yeah.
um, and my mum, she was very devoted, Jehovah's Witness, but unfortunately, she also had some really bad, severe mental health challenges and issues. Um, she also had a physical disability as well.
Right.
Um, so she was a quite large woman. I think at one point weighing around 350 kilos. So at 8 years old, I already had a ton of responsibility. I was going to the shops and getting
Mm.
groceries. I
Yeah.
had caretaker responsibilities for her.
Yeah.
And moving forward into my teen years, and why I reference being, a Jehovah's Witness and stuff, there was a lot of strict rules, a lot of different things, on top of the fact that there was quite a bit of domestic violence at home as well. And
Right.
so, in order, I could not focus, I could not do nothing at the house. I constantly worrying if it's about my mum or not feeling able to like express myself. So I left the home and was couch surfing and moving around to different plays. Um, a year into doing that, my mom unfortunately passed away, which caused a significant amount of grief for me. I felt a lot of guilt for not being at the home,
Mm. Mm.
and that's probably when my substance use started to peak. Was drinking heavily almost every day, um, doing all sorts of other substances on the weekend or when I could get my hands on them. And about a year after that, I met my son's mother, and shortly after that, she was pregnant. Um, yeah, he was born, and I was still struggling with my addictions. I was still struggling with housing. Um, it was a very difficult time. Um, ended up Child protection ended up actually getting involved and took my son away,
Mm.
and that was a really um, difficult thing for me. Um, it put me into well, one of the things I was doing at the time was I was smoking cannabis. So, I thought that that was okay, but apparently not.
Mm.
They then told me I had to quit smoking cannabis. I was like, "All right, fine, I'll quit smoking cannabis," but that turned into drinking more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is a like a negotiation. You wanted access to your boy,
Mm.
and they're saying he's in care. These are the kind of conditions you can get access to. Were they helpful? Was the system trying to help you, or were they making life difficult for you?
Honestly, from my perspective, it was a lot of quick judgments
Yeah.
without actually confirming those suspicions
Yeah.
um, or things that were said. There was a time when child protection were at court. They're supposed to be there for the child, that's their reason for being there, and they're sitting on the mother with the mother
Mm.
and calling me all sorts of things, calling me an abuser, uh, calling me a substance like a drug
Yeah.
addict, all these
Yeah.
sort of different things, which was far from the truth. And it was just very difficult at the time. They did try to provide some supports and stuff, but really was not much there at all. Um, so in that situation, I had to just make do with what I had. I started going back to school, went to go see a psychologist. Um, I had really tried to stay away from substances and really had a hard time, so I put myself into a youth detox, which I
Right.
stayed for 7 days, which really supported me in,
Mm,
um, getting myself a little bit
mm,
more clean. Uh, yeah, it was really, really quite difficult, but, eventually, um, they saw with all the work and I mean, I got letters from my teachers, I got letters from the
yeah.
doctors, I got letters from the detox, I got letters from social workers, saying all the type of work that I was doing so that I could get my son back in my care, but I was lucky that I had the confidence to advocate for myself and
Yeah.
to talk to the people that I needed to talk to. So, it was very difficult, but yeah.
It's extraordinary determination you've shown to do that, right? Is that the carer in you? If we go back to your mum, right, at such an early age, taking ownership of your mum's care, right? And you mentioned it was there was violence in the household. What was safe for you? You know, where in that space was your safety?
There were definitely aspects where I could probably point out to where I could just have been a kid, but then a lot of the time I remember being the conflict manager, you know? So the
Right.
arguments between my mother and my father, or the arguments between my siblings and my mother, and there were always lots of things going on. I was very, very young, I think, and there were times my mum had tried to hurt herself, or I can
Yeah.
remember countless times of hospitals, like the ambulance coming to the house,
Mm,
or
yeah.
different things like that. So really, when I was younger, I didn't really get to experience what it was like to be a child. On top of that, being a Jehovah's Witness, I didn't celebrate birthdays. I didn't celebrate. You kind of just feel kind of ostracized from the rest of the world. So even at things like, you wouldn't think of it as such a big deal, but the national anthem, singing the national anthem at school, I was told that I had to sit down when they were doing the national anthem, and so
Wow.
that really puts you on display.
Mm.
So
It's almost
um,
designed to invite you to have to deal with adversity from the start, right? It's like, you're creating being, lined up as a child martyr, really.
mm,
You're gonna stand out and be bullied, don't you?
mm. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was, uh, yeah, it's also what I think led to my, really impulsive behaviors when I was out at the home. Really like a lot of risk taking, putting myself in really, dodgy positions, um, just because I wanted to experience things, because I felt like I'd been like a bird in a cage for a
Mm.
really long time.
Well,
So, yeah,
mm.
yeah. Al
With your family, you have brothers and sisters?
yeah, I have a twin sister and I have a younger sister. Yeah,
Oh, wow. Did
yeah.
you, how was their journey through that period?
I would say like the primary care of like my mother, and then um there were different aspects where I was like had a lot of responsibility for them because I'm the older twin
Mm,
in that, and also being a man in that
mm,
in that household. So my
yeah,
family's from Uruguay, from South America. Then also you have the religious text that makes the man in this
yeah.
situation, in this religion specifically, the man is the head of the household. Or, which should have been my father really, but, yeah, I had a lot of responsibility, um, for them growing up and stuff like that.
Did you maintain a relationship through
Yeah, we've got a
all
we've got a really good relationship these days. In the past, I wasn't always so great, but
yeah,
my sisters are really supportive of me, and, my son has a good relationship with them, which is awesome.
right.
Um,
Do you think, like you mentioned conflict between your parents, was your father father's such an important role for a young man in that situation, mediating between them and so on. How did you understand what it was to be a man? Was that your father's job? Did he offer that, or is that
I
something
guess,
else?
like, to be honest, I have a lot of respect for my father for being with my mother,
Mm,
throughout um, her mental health and her disability.
yeah.
Um, the he he was just quite, belittling all the time. He'd
Yeah.
belittle me all the time. Like one of his things he'd say was like maricon, which means like gay in
Right. Yeah.
Spanish,
Yeah. Yeah.
So and he he could never have a serious conversation about anything. If I spoke to him about girls or something like that, it would just be me at the butt end of a joke.
Right.
Um and yeah, he had a really tough time regulating himself. So, he'd finish work and just be pissed off for no reason. And you start
Mm,
carrying on yelling and
mm,
screaming and stuff and saying names to my mom and stuff.
mm,
And what ended up making that worse is um when she did pass away, he was also in a lot of grief and stuff. But
mm,
he really took that on me too. So because I tried to come back home, I tried to see if I could fix the
right.
relationships or whatever. And so you got to be the man of the house because he doesn't know how to do. He never knew how. And at times it got really physical. Like one time I had to I put him in a headlock because I was scared he was going to come to me. And
Mm,
another time he literally put a knife to my chest,
yeah.
and that was a really terrifying moment. Um, and me and my father, we have a good relationship now, and it was a very
How did you get there right after? Like, obviously, incidents. There's a lot of stress in that whole scenario you painted, but there's
yeah.
also like a lot of growth to happen before you could get to a good relationship.
And
Was
it took
that
a few
you?
years.
Was like, did you put the hard yards in, or has your dad been on his own journey, or what?
He's been on his own sort of thing, and he's still they're still kind of the same in a sense, but we have our respective distance from each other,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I respect that. Maybe he just didn't get educated enough. Maybe he didn't learn from his own father how to regulate himself. Maybe his this traumas and stuff that I don't know about. That he went through that caused him to
Yeah.
be in this situation, and that has provided me with a lot more, like, less anger within myself because
Mm,
I've just kind of just learned to accept the way that he is and just to move forward. It was always trying to impress him and stuff like that. Never good enough. Um, you know, so it's just what it is for me in my personal situation. Like I've learned to just appreciate for him for who he is and learn to respect our own distance. You know what I mean? So
That's a big place to get to for a young man right on a journey. So a lot of acceptance there. Does that feel good?
for me,
Like,
yeah,
it can't
personally,
be can't be
personally, it
fun
feels
having that history, but
no, no. But for a really long time, even when my son was really young, I remember having all this resentment towards him, all
yeah.
of this anger and frustration. And I never really got much support from him. Not even a phone call. When I left. Um, Now as my son has gotten a little older, he's also realized the time he's missed out with my son, his grandson.
Mm,
So
yeah.
he's tried to put in the work to be a bit better. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
I mean, there was a time when he was trying to make fun of my son. He was trying to say something that it triggered me. I was like, nah,
Wow.
you want to be here? You can't do that. Yeah, and I
Wow.
explained to him, you know, what that did to me. And
Yeah.
I think it was the only time he ever said sorry, and he tried not to do it. So I was really proud of him for doing that. So yeah, and we've tried to move forward, and I think it's always better to try and, um, if it's possible, to try and maintain the relationship with family, because oh, it's a tough world out there already. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I love in particular hearing we often learn how to be a dad or how to be a man from the people closest to us, our fathers and and family. And it sounds like your example wasn't great, but you've turned that around and you give a chance to to give your son an experience of your father in a way that you didn't have.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
definitely.
so what was key to that? So you mentioned your son being a motivation. Um, how did you relate to the substances, alcohol and other drugs that you were doing?
I guess I had a lot of pain and frustration, and didn't really see much for myself. And it was, so I think the parts of it were explorative. Trying as a young teenager. Trying to explore the world. And then other
Yeah.
parts became about like, numbing this feeling of whatever the thing I was feeling. I didn't really know how to deal with those really big emotions. It was more like, yeah, we'll just put that back there and we'll
Yeah.
won't worry about it when it comes
Best
up again.
avoid it. Let's get back to, having a couple of quiet ones with. Yeah.
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 Um, but yeah, well, as you were saying, there was, as a man, you look up to, certain role models, and my father wasn't particularly someone that I looked up to as what I picture a man to be or whatnot. But I had a friend that I would couch surf on. I'd sleep at his place, and his dad was super awesome. He was um, a single father at the time, and he had 3 kids.
Wow.
He looked after them pretty much on his own with, and he it was the first time I ever had a one-on-one conversation, about things. And yeah,
Wow.
he'd pull me up. He'd
Yeah.
he'd he'd put me aside, be like, "What's going on?" You know what I mean? Like, "What's
Yeah.
happening?" He'd cook me a meal, he'd talk, maybe had a bit too much to drink sometimes, but, he was
Yeah.
a good laugh,
Yeah.
and he was a really, awesome guy. And yeah, unfortunately, he recently passed away, so that was really sad. But he was a really I think a really important factor in my life of what I viewed what a man should be. A provider, a caretaker, um, someone who had really great work ethic. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. When you decided to do the work, to commit to, you know, cleaning things up, you know, what did you hope to achieve? What was the plan?
I honestly, I at the time, it was really difficult. So I knew I had this idea that I wanted to be present in my son's life, and at the time, it was becoming increasingly very difficult to be present.
Yeah.
First, because I was sleeping around rough. So, I mean, there was a time I was sleeping all the way in Thomastown, and to go visit him, and he lived in at the time with his grandmother, and he lived all the way in Tarneet, and I'd have to travel like 2 hours there to see him for 1 hour,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
travel 2 hours back, and yeah, so it was just so the goal was just to be able to have my own little place and be well enough that the DHS can get off my back and let me have my son in my care. And at first, it was really just about having a co-parenting arrangement with his mother
Yeah.
or with the grandmother, whoever was suitable at the time. Um, but it just, yeah, it really literally went from me having him 3 days a week to, I swear, like a month later, I had him uh 7 days a week.
Wow.
So yeah, that was when he was
So
about a year and 6 months old. So
that's an unusual arrangement. So you must have done a great job to present well.
yeah,
So what was the biggest challenge through all of that time for you?
I guess it was a sense of like of loneliness a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I felt really stuck in like not feeling like I had much of anybody at the time. Me and my family weren't very close. The friends I did have weren't always the greatest influence. Um,
Uh,
so there was a lot of times where I was just sitting on my own trying to, you know, figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
And those were really challenging. Also, just trying to figure out how to be a parent. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I remember I got him, and I had gotten some stuff organized with what I thought was, all the right things. And we're living in a little share house too, so we're like, I'm in my room, like, and
Right.
we're
Yeah.
sharing. My son, we're obviously sharing a room, and I've fed him some milk, and then he needed to get changed, and then I go to go change him, but I must have put him down too quickly, and he started vomiting everywhere, and then I tried to pick him up, and then I got shit on myself, and he's got vomit everywhere, and I'm just like, I had no idea what to do, and I paused, I took a breath, and I figured it out, but there were a lot of moments where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So, those are really the really challenging times. even like the confidence I had with myself, and if I go back a little bit before I had my son in my care, I remember I had a rubbish bag full of what belongings I had. I was at Flinders Street Station. I'm going down the escalator, and all of a sudden my bag just kind of like breaks, and all this stuff falls on the ground.
No.
And I remember trying to pick up my stuff, and I just remember all the different individuals, like no one really tried to acknowledge me. No one tried to like help, and it's not my stuff wasn't dirty or anything,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but people were just walking around me, kind of walking over me, um, and the shame that I felt of all those eyes on me would, and like I just felt really low at the time for myself,
yeah.
So yeah, so just tons of different challenges in those times, but I kept trying to push. So
I, I don't know. Do you think people understand that feeling, right? Where you're like, people walk around you and they look at you, and but at the same time, you're a person with emotions and that sense of shame. Do people understand that? Do you think?
no, I don't think so. I think people are quick to jump to conclusions about an individual based on what they look like or what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think that's always the case. I try to be optimistic. I try to be hopeful that some people are caring and maybe they're just really busy with their day, kind of stuff. You know?
That's a that's very generous of you.
Yeah.
That idea of shame. One time when I was sick and I fell over outside, and that idea I couldn't get up and had
Mm,
needed passers-by to help me up. And just the sense of wanting to disappear into the soil and not be, visible.
mm,
And now I think I've benefited from having that experience, but it's not something I wanted, I want to revisit, but
mm.
I think it's added something like some awareness or some compassion in my life. Do you feel like going through some of those things have added to your world?
Yeah, definitely. I think if anything, one of the biggest things I can just always look back and be like, well, I was doing that.
Yeah.
I was there. I struggled, but I managed to push through. It didn't matter. Maybe at the time it was sort of like honestly, because you say plan, you must have a plan. I remember not being able to visualize any plan or any
Yeah.
idea or what my future would look
Yeah.
like, or if I had a future. At
Yeah.
times I thought I was gonna die, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
based on the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
Getting completely blacked out and
Yeah.
waking up somewhere I don't remember. So, yeah, I look back at and sort of that built, that resilience that I built over that time, you know? And so the challenges that I face today, I can be like, "You know what? I dealt with that. I can deal with this today," and I can if I don't know what I'm doing, that's fine, because that's okay. It doesn't matter. Like, if I don't know where I'm going, at least I'm going somewhere? So it's just
Are you proud of yourself?
yeah, I would definitely say I'm proud of myself, but there was a time I wasn't very proud of myself. Yeah.
No, no. You beautifully articulate that moment where, I thought I was going to die. Can I explore that idea that is that like about your worth? Like you just didn't care anymore? Like it, or, was it about how life was so tough that, if you died, it would seem like a good option or something at that time?
I just I just had enough. I was done I was dealing with all of this shit. I didn't get to be a kid. Now I have to deal
Yeah.
with this shit. And I'm so over it.
Yeah.
I'm going out and getting pissed or getting on pills or putting
Mm.
powders up my nose, and sometimes in the back of my mind I was hoping I'd just finish.
Yeah.
But I stuck
Yeah.
around. I woke up. You know what I mean? But so I'm glad. I'm really happy that I did. I think my son's really happy. I did too.
Yeah. 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 It's a beautiful, in some ways, dark but beautiful picture you're painting of hanging on. What did you learn on the streets to keep you going? What did you find out that you could do
I think
to
my
stay
biggest
around?
thing I learned was I'm a really good talker and a really good listener.
Right.
So I met so many people, you know. and I was very compassionate. I was very understanding. I was very non-judgmental, which led people to be very kind and compassionate towards me. I learned how to really build strong relationships with good people. And I
Mm.
also learned not to build relationships with certain other individuals,
Wow.
Um, so, and I understood the importance of, that that relationship building with individuals and people that like, if I did the wrong thing, if I cheated, stole,
Yeah.
I'd get, I'd be left again, and I didn't want to do that. Um, you know, so
As a father now, like so often we dictate to our kids to keep them safe or to make them acceptable or upright or to teach them compliance or hoping that they become model citizens. What do you hope to bring from all of those tough lessons? What do you hope to bring on to your son?
to my son, well,
Mm.
I guess a freedom of expression. You know what I mean? So if he wants to see, I don't see nothing wrong really with talking back. You know what I mean? I feel like some the conversation is a two-way street. So if I say something, you can say something back to me, and I'm happy to have a conversation. Obviously, there are times where you have to put I'm the dad here. You got to listen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Certain times when it's not a debate, it's
yeah, it's not a
yeah,
debate.
yeah,
Yeah, we can have sometimes I'm happy to have a discussion because sometimes maybe I'm not thinking properly. And not, maybe I'm jumping to a conclusion. Maybe I'm rushing to a consequence or something, but I'm not really thinking. So I like that we can have that conversation, even if he's so little. But I just want to inspire him to be whoever he wants to be. So if he wants to go and explore soccer, let's go explore soccer. You know what I mean? If he wants to do more art and he wants to learn about, drawing planets because he's really into science and space and all that, let's go explore, all that sort of stuff. And I really just want to build onto that because as I said, it being a Jehovah's Witness, I felt like a cage and a bird. I didn't really get to feel like I could explore myself, explore the things that I like doing. Um, and it really just restricted me. So I hope you know, for him to do that. And I hope for him to be, kind, compassionate, understanding, empathetic, um, you know, and just a good guy. And I think he's a good kid right now. I could be biased, but I think he's all right. He's doing all well. So
I think it's appropriate that you're biased,
yeah,
right? Like our kids need us to be on their side.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you have so many positive elements you're talking about, like compassion and empathy, understanding, acceptance, right? Just to, understanding that other people are on their own journey. That's a massive skill. I think so many more of us really need to explore. I'm really touched by that image of you losing your gear down the escalator, and the people just not helping, just Do you think those people were they bad people? Like what's going on that people don't reach and help? You've been there, and then yet you're not like that. You would have helped if you'd seen yourself on there. So why are you different?
I don't know. I don't view, the cover of the book. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of other pages in there, and I feel that if people got to a place where they could be open to understanding that their stereotypes or their things that were ingrained in them from when they were kids or whatever isn't always the reality of the situation.
Right.
Sometimes it's simple as, you'll hear maybe a parent say something about a homeless person to their
Yeah.
child and, oh, we got to stay away from them, or they're just drug addicts, or they just really made the wrong decisions. It's all their fault. We forget to look at the systems around us that may have led to this individual's dealing with this situation, or that I think sometimes we take for granted privileges. For example, I mean, I still have my privilege of being connected with my family.
Mm,
There are times that individuals are like completely
mm,
ostracized from their family, and that could be by choice or not. Um, it could be, that there's other things going on. And I think we forget to think about that. We're always constantly looking just at the individual, just
yeah,
at the face value, when there's a
yeah.
whole book just ready to be, spoken to and read.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love that. I love the saying, when somebody criticizes, you don't know me, right? That idea, when people make a judgment, they don't know you, right?
Mm.
So, um, how do you think you chose to study community service, so and work and look at working and just picked up a job in AOD and support? How do you think your lived experience helps you support others?
Well, I think it helps with building trust with individuals. I think if somebody knows that I've experienced what I've experienced, and they don't even have to know the whole details about it, they could just have a better feeling of like, oh, this person does see what I see. Because there's a certain sense of people, and I think there are amazing people in the industry that are doing a bunch of great stuff that don't have that lived experience of homelessness and whatnot.
Mm.
It's just sometimes it's really hard to be putting yourself in that. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so I can relate to that. So I can build with
Mm.
that with people and build relationships and hope, you know, I can relate with them when I can say that sometimes the systems that we have are shit and they don't always work out well. But hope for them to continue to try and engage, because I think that's the problem. It's when people disengage, and this is when um, things can become more challenging for them further down the track. And so I want to use my experience to keep people engaged with services and to try and ongoingly move forward with themselves. But I can totally relate and understand that, sometimes systems don't work the way they do. Sometimes workers may overpromise when they shouldn't, and they don't get the outcomes you want. Um, but yeah, and I just love talking to people, and if I can help another person out, based on a little conversation, or get them to come again to a meeting or something like that, I'm like, yeah, cool, all right, yeah, let's do it.
It's you're it's not an easy path to support others who are struggling. So
Mm.
yeah, what do you know you're going to have to do to keep your world on track?
Well, really looking after myself, learning, and I'm always learning every year something new about me, and I'm trying to continuously learn more about myself, and build upon that. A couple years ago, I got into miniature painting and stuff like that, and I used to be when I was a kid. I used to be really nerdy. Like I was nerdy, but I was so scared of the pressures of everyone else that I wouldn't explore these things.
Mm,
I said to
right.
myself, "Who cares? I'm doing this
Yeah.
like I'm 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 the one doing it. Yeah, if you don't like me playing with my toy soldiers, go, do your own thing. I'm happy doing it. It makes me cool. I'm still trying to get better at, eating better and working out, and I
Mm.
still fall for the traps of DoorDash and and Afterpay and things like that. But
Terrible. Fancy
yeah,
that. Okay.
but continuously working to continually improve my self-care in that respect, and also having time to when I need to reach out, when I need to speak, I know when that time comes, and then I'll go reach out and speak to whoever I need to make sure that I'm stable. Because the reality of the situation is when I'm going into a profession like this, and peer work and stuff, is that yeah, I am building trust with people, but people are also going to be sharing a large amount of things, trauma related stuff, their own personal experiences and all that. And that can really come down heavy on me if I'm not
Yeah.
careful. So yeah, just continuously working on myself for that self-care and stuff, and build upon that resilience. Or even the fact that like I also have a certain, so this is where I think I'm gonna be fine as well. Because I've experienced it, I know that if I'd like there were times I didn't get a house, straight away, or emergency com or whatever, I was okay.
Yeah.
I survived. You know what I mean? That was my normal. So I know the people that I'm helping, maybe they're still probably gonna sleep rough the next night, and I know it's gonna be cold.
Yeah.
But I know that for a fact that this person has dealt with this they've been doing this. Having one conversation with me is probably not going to change everything. Um, you know, and I always hope for the best, but they're they have their own resilience and they know what they're in, right? So yeah.
I really like that. It's a sense of respecting where they are, rather than feeling like, it's a tragedy. In many ways, they are the triumph. They are demonstrating an incredible power to survive what they've survived. You described so beautifully that, as a kid, always being, belittled and criticized. What happens to a child who hears that constantly, right? That's a huge barrier to them feeling like they can succeed or be worth something and so on. So getting over that, just even, surviving that, finding a way to get through and become yourself.
Mm,
It's a pretty impressive effort.
yeah. Definitely an ongoing effort.
Yeah.
I still struggle with the man in the mirror at times, So I think as we all do, if we're all honest. But I keep trying to encourage myself to keep pushing forward, to keep remind myself, what, I'm not an idiot. you know, I I actually am quite smart when it comes to certain things. Maybe there's some things I could improve on or learn more about. Uh, and I don't have to get things perfect. This is a very internal thing, but I'll just call myself an idiot when I make a mistake. You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, hold up. I just tripped. You know what I mean? It's not the end of the
Yeah.
world. You're not a
Yeah.
fucking idiot.
That self-dialogue is important. What are your hopes? What are you anticipating you'll tell people when you're supporting them closely?
Well, most of the time, I don't really want to overshare my
Yeah,
situation. If anything, it's just to relate that I've dealt with certain systems and certain things,
yeah,
and more for them to come to their own conclusion for whatever, and empower them to make decisions in their life that better themselves. So, making sure someone's informed with all the decisions that they're able to take, and really supporting them in their own journey and their own choice. There was a time where I just needed someone to sit there and say, you know what, you can do this.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna. I hate it when someone try to tell me what to do exactly. Oh, you gotta just do this, and you gotta
yeah,
stop doing that, and you gotta. No, no, no.
yeah,
Just because at the end of the day, we know the best for ourselves,
yeah,
whether we choose to
yeah,
admit it or not.
yeah,
You know, and I
yeah,
hope to bring the best out of people, and hope to empower them to make the best decisions for themselves.
yeah, absolutely. Um, is there a time where you will explain your life in detail to your son?
Yeah, for sure. I think, and I'm quite transparent, obviously with a bit of a barrier, right? Like I don't go into full details about everything, but my son does know that previously, before I had him, that I was kind of like, I was homeless and I was moving around. He does know that I do, public speaking, and
Mm,
that I go and I try to support people, and obviously keeping it at like at an appropriate level that's not too much. I think some people try to hide these certain things and
yeah,
aspects. Maybe it's because of shame, or maybe because they don't want them to repeat the same mistakes, or whatever the
yeah,
case may be. I find being transparent is a good way for them to they can learn, from whatever it is, and um, you can see also how hard I work too. So anyway, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
a
just,
joyful story, really, right?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, why not share that? Um, I'm imagining you're creating a different path that you and your son can travel. What do you hope that looks like? What lessons do you want it to conquer? Because I can't imagine you want the same experiences, but you still want, you want to share, knowledge and, have your son experience making his own choices and growing in his way.
Mm.
What what's different? You've done it one way. What do you hope?
Yeah, obviously there'll be different times for different ages. Right now he's still young, so for me, I want him just to experience being young and exploring different things that he likes. As he becomes like a teenager, I hope to challenge him in some ways, so that he can build that resilience and build, to push him to do all these different aspects, of life that it can be challenging. But yeah, I just want to be right next to him, while we're
Yeah,
doing it in a way, not too
yeah, yeah,
close, especially when he gets
Yeah,
older.
yeah,
I guess I don't want to cradle him, but
yeah,
I want to be alongside him when he's on his journey. So when he needs a hand, because we all do, especially when we're young, um, I'll be there. And it's not always like I'm going to know exactly what to say and when to say it. Uh, and I hope that I build this as he grows, but this trust that he can come to me and he can tell me how he's feeling and what's going on in order for us to be able to move forward and continue doing what we need to do.
yeah, beautiful. You think anyone can get through a life like you've had?
Not always. Sometimes I used to think about this actually a lot. Like, I think I was fortunate enough that I was advocating a lot for myself. So when I needed help, I could reach out and I could talk. But I know of many individuals that really struggle to say, especially as a man too, to be like, hey, I really need help right now. Or this
Yeah,
is really hurting me right now. And this is really causing a lot of grief and a lot of thing. And I find that that's a really challenging thing for some people, and men in particularly, so I was very fortunate that even though my mum had all the issues that she had, one of the biggest things that I learned from her was how to express myself. So,
yeah,
and I was very lucky and fortunate to learn that. And that's, I think, kind of what's translated in me being able to be like, hey, I need a little bit of help here, or I need to talk and I need to say stuff. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. So,
yeah.
and that's not a very easy thing for a lot of people. I think that everybody has the, potential to do whatever they're wanting to do. You know what I mean? So, in their journey. So,
What scares you?
what scares me?
Either Yeah, so, you've been through a lot, right? And, you seem to have accepted that now, and you sort of, you've got to, you put it in place that it's not sort of picking at you. Obviously, there's still work to do to put all the memories away. But what would scare you, going forward, worry about?
That's what a big worry would be if something happened to my son, I guess, or if
Mm,
that'd probably be the biggest thing. If something happened to him, or if somehow I lost his care, or whatever the case would be, or having to go back, and deal with all those struggles again, like to go back and to have to go start hostels or emergency account
mm,
because something happened with
mm,
my housing or something like that.
yeah,
Um, you know, I think that I'm in a good position right now. I think my son's in a good position, and we always hope for the best, but things can always happen. So but I'm optimistic. I try to be. I think for
yeah,
me, it's like the best thing to do. Like, cause you could be
yeah,
like super like negative about everything.
yeah,
You just have to look one way or another. So I just try to look at the upside. So
yeah.
yeah.
And going forward, you live in Australia. You have contact with your family. You and your son are doing well. Is that um, what would be a dream?
A dream.
Yeah,
One of my biggest things I'm really passionate about is supporting young fathers, and
yeah,
obviously other young homeless and stuff. But if I could do this in like 10 years, it would be to have like some sort of like organization or support service that's dedicated to supporting young fathers and parents, but a main focus on fathers, because I feel like there's a really lacking in services for fathers.
yeah,
Um, there's always, mums and bubs and all this sort of stuff. But I mean, there's so many stereotypes that go out there that like, oh, you don't have to be there. I remember I was at work, and because I worked as a chef in my, or as a cook, but you can always come back later. You don't have to
Oh
be there for
wow,
him. You can come.
wow.
You're his dad. He's gonna want to come to
Yeah,
you, or that that we can't have a maternal instinct at all. That we can't be loving and compassionate and understanding and patient. Um, that we can't build upon these skills and develop like beautiful relationships with our children. So I guess my dream would be to be able to provide support for other young fathers going through these difficult situations, navigating like legal systems, child protection,
Yeah.
substance use, uh, you know, learning about the development of their child. You know, I would love to be able to create something around that. Um, so yeah, one day maybe,
Yeah.
so, but gotta focus on the now, right now. So yeah,
Well, having a dream's great. Getting lost in it and leaving and messing up the now is not so good. So it sounds like you've got it right.
yeah.
Um, and speaking of dream, I think it's been a dream conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know you, Lewis, and hearing about your journey. But I'm inspired by the level of acceptance and joy you bring to your, to your relationship with your son and what you're doing now. It's very, very impressive, my friend. So I wish you all the best in finishing your studies and getting on with supporting people.
Thank you. I really uh,
Mm.
appreciate being the opportunity to share my story, and I really do hope that it does inspire individuals or hopes people to do what they want to do and move forward. Like I said about that butterfly.
Yeah,
Sometimes life is terrible. It puts you sideways. But you look outside, the birds are still tweeting. The sun still comes out and says hello. Everything's still moving. And you can find something good in it. So gotta try.
outstanding message, man. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, and Kintsugi Heroes thanks you for being with. All the best, my friend.
All right, thank you.